Snow is here in Tarkov, and today I'll be showing you the 4 major things that you need to be aware of to play well in this season, starting with the good old-fashioned audio testing. So as usual, the snowy footsteps are a little bit different to the normal ones that we see in Tarkov, so I've done some quick and dirty testing using the Contact 6, which is the longest ranged audio headset and has the highest ambient suppression. And as normal, we've gone through and compared the ranges for various different types of movement. This is basically the first time that those sounds become audible for me on my system, and as usual, you might get slightly different results versus me. If your volume is higher or lower than mine, you might have a slightly further audio range or a slightly lower one. But normally with this kind of thing, the changes are more important than the absolute ranges, because 3 or 4 meters don't make that much difference in the game itself. So overall, I would say that the audio does seem quite similar. When I tested sprinting, that sounded at 67 meters, which is exactly the same as I had previously. And by the way, I don't actually look at my last set and can't remember what it was. So when I do it completely blind, and then I compare it to the old one just to make sure I'm not biasing myself. So sprinting is the same. Now walking was probably the one that seemed the most different, and this one came out at 57 meters rather than 66 meters previously, because in the last set of testing I did point out that walking is technically audible at about the same distance as sprinting. Now the walking itself is harder to hear than sprinting, it's not as obvious, but you can technically hear it at quite a long range, but that doesn't seem to be the case in the snow, at least to me. There is a caveat I'll make on this, but I'll go through that in a moment. Slow walk also seems slightly closer at 26 meters versus 34 meters. And then the other 2 slowest versions, which is crouching and slow crouching, seemed pretty much the same. I had 22 meters in the snow versus 23 normally. And 10 meters for slow crouch in the snow versus 11 normally. So it's very, very similar. Now, the big caveat that I wanted to add here is that the snow audibility of individual footsteps seems to be a bit more varied than it does for normal footsteps. This still happens under normal conditions, where you've got certain steps that are louder than others or more recognizable or something, so that you can hear them from further, but you just hear one individual footstep. The snow also seems to do this, and some of the footsteps you can't really hear them at all, and then some of them are really obvious. This makes it a bit tricky to work out the exact distance as to which these audio footsteps are playing, because it depends on which footstep audio plays at that particular range based on who's listening. So it is a little bit inconsistent, and the snow seems to add a little bit more variability than we get in the usual game. Overall, I don't think this should change how you play particularly. Just use the audio ranges and the heuristics that you've built up in your mind from the 1.0 wipe so far, and that should stand you in good stead. Do pay attention to the ambient though, because in the snow sometimes you do get these howling gales, which mean that it's very difficult to actually hear anybody, and then sometimes the wind dies down and it's very, very, very quiet and still. So just make sure that you're understanding how loud the ambient sound is, because that's going to affect greatly whether you hear somebody or not. Sometimes you just can't hear them at all because the wind is so loud, and sometimes you can hear people crystal clear because there's just no audio at all whatsoever from the background. So next up, we're going to look at the winter clothes themselves for your PMC, not your gear, but the actual clothing that your PMC can have on. And one thing that people often mistake is that they go into their actual game and they go into Ragman, because this is where it always used to be, and they go into services and they go to try to find the stuff in here. And this is not the right way to do it, because we've got various pieces of arena clothing and things that you've purchased. And if you want to see all of the clothing that you have available, you have to go into this screen here instead, which is on your character and on your overall tab. And then you've got these 2 drop downs. One you've got for the tops and the other one you've got for the trousers or the bottoms. Now this combination that I've got on here is the USEC winter outfit. This is the one that BSG have just put on sale actually, and they've called the whole package USEC Scaddy. As you can see here, this comes with a top and a pair of trousers that don't really seem to have any bearing to winter at all. So the top is really, really good for USEC, and this is the USEC winter one that I've got on here. There are a few other alternatives that I haven't actually bought yet, so you do need to go and buy these things over on Ragman. So for example, the USEC PCU Iron Sight, which only costs 40k, you could potentially unlock this and use this instead for your guy. because this one is another sort of winter looking top for USEC. But you can have a look through and decide what you like. I mean, you could get something that's sort of more grey. It depends on where you're playing outside, whether you're actually trying to fit into foliage or not. Even Urban Responder actually isn't too bad. As far as the trousers go, USEC are a bit limited with the standard set of equipment, and most of the good ones come from Arena actually. So USEC Gladiator, this comes from the latest Battle Pass at around level 59, I think it is. And this is probably my favourite. I think this works quite nicely. We've got this lower section, which is a bit darker, and then the winter camo on the top section, because this is the part that's going to be silhouetted mostly against the snow. There's another alternative as well, which is the USEC Champion lower, which is these ones, which are kind of grey and then black at the bottom, which I don't think is too bad. I think I prefer the Gladiators, and these ones are even higher up. These are level 99 on the current Battle Pass. This is the free section, so you don't have to pay for the customs tac map or anything like this, but you will have to level up through to either 50 something and up to level 99 if you want to go and get these things. I just unlocked everything the other day, about a week ago, and I do most of my dailies and play quite a bit of Arena, so it is a bit of a grind if you do want to get up to these higher level clothes. On the bear side, I'm nowhere near as familiar with the bear side as I am with the USEC side, but bears can literally use this one, the bear white collar, which is white at the top and it's slightly tan, slightly dirty, but this is better than nothing. And then you can use the winter trousers from the Korovod event, which were these ones here, and these are also purchasable now from BSG if you do want to do that. There are some other alternatives, obviously, if you don't want to pay for these specifically, and I would say that it doesn't necessarily make too much difference. I mean, something like Bear Paladin, so just have a look through. I mean, people are going to spot you quite easily, and we'll come on to this in a moment. People are going to spot you quite easily in winter anyway, even if you're wearing white clothing, to be honest, because the visibility is just so high. But before we talk about that, we're going to have a look at some of the gear as well to put on. I've tried to sort of collect together what I think is probably the best outfit overall for this, so we're going to go back into our stash and look at our player. So here you've got a couple of different options. On body armor, I think the Gazelle probably is one of the best, to be honest with you, because it's this nice grey colour. As you can see here, it fits really nicely in with the other white camos and doesn't really stand out, which is pretty cool. There are other options, obviously, but some of them are either just not very good. You've got things like the Module 3M armor, which is only class 2, so you're just not going to want to wear this. And there's a couple of armored rigs as well over on Ragman 3. So obviously you've got the Gazelle here, which is barterable for gold chains and 2 Magica coffees, but there's a couple of rigs that are not too bad. I think the Eclipse is probably one of the better ones, because this is sort of a grey, it says Ranger Green, but it's sort of a grey-y kind of colour, so this is not too bad. I don't like the ScavTalk that much, because it's got these magazines that are just always in there, so you've got this big orange section on your front, so that doesn't really help. And then there's another good contender over on Ref, which I saw earlier, which is this guy here, the Tactec in Storm. Unfortunately, this was a Battle Pass Season 0, so if you didn't unlock it, you can't really get this now. But if you did have it, then this is one possibility. Let's have a scroll through. There's quite a few different ones. There's another one here, which is like SK Woodland. It's got some kind of white and black grey kind of colours in it, so this is not too bad either. But there's quite a few options. If you're using a regular armour like the Gazelle that we were looking at, then some of the options in terms of rigs, you've got the Blackrock in grey, which is one of the regular ones, which is pretty easy. I'm actually currently wearing the Bank Robber rig, which is not very big. It's not one of the good rigs in the game, unfortunately, but it does work really nicely with this. You could also, in theory, use the Thunderbolt. I do like the Thunderbolt. It's one of my personal favourites. It's a bit more grey, a bit more dark. It does stand out a little bit, but it's quite a small rig, so it doesn't overlap too much with the armour itself. So that's another potential option. And then you've got another couple just lying around like this one, which is the Azimuth in Serpat, which is kind of similar. This is like a grey-y kind of green sort of colour. There's a couple of different choices there. Now, helmets wise, there's not that much to go on. I think the best one here is the Flux. This one is a class 4 helmet. You can only buy it from the flea market until you get to Ragman level 4. And these are actually relatively cheap. I'm kind of surprised that they're as cheap as they are, to be honest. I might end up just buying a few before this video goes out, because I think these probably should be a bit more than they are, because these are effectively TC 2002s or Bastions and that type of helmet, but with a white camo covering instead. Failing this, if this ends up getting really expensive, then if we go over onto Ragman 2, you can go and do the barter for the Ratnik in EMR Arctic. This one costs 2 bleaches, but unfortunately it's only class 3. You do get ears protection on this, which you don't get on the Flux, but I really do think that class 4 is way better than having ears on class 3, because most of the time, if you're getting hit in the head with M856A1 or something, then this isn't going to bounce around and the class 4 will. So if you get shot in the ears, even with this on, you're probably going to die anyway. So I'd rather have the Flux, but this is another option if you want to do something on the cheap, and bleach is relatively inexpensive, which currently it is. There's another option as well, which is in Peacekeeper. Again, this is another class 3 one, which is a bit unfortunate. That's the Galvian Kaiman Hybrid in grey. This one is only class 3 as well. But you do have the ability to add this thing, the Ballistic Applique to it, which is class 4 for the top, which makes it not too bad. But this is kind of expensive for what you get, honestly, and I think the other ones are probably just better. Grey also isn't anywhere near as good as white, especially given it's like literally on our head. So I think if you do want to go camouflaged, then just go with Deflux. Just to note, you can see I'm wearing a white balaclava. You can just buy this from Ragman. And then in terms of bags, there's one that really stands out as really, really good, which is this guy, which is the LBT. Fortunately, on Ragman, there's actually quite a few barters that you can do for these. Normally, you'd be buying these, which is Kajura, and you can make Kajura in the hideout using 2 sling bags. So this is pretty cheap. It's like 12k for each one that you get. But there's also this Alpine bag instead that you can get, which is the one that I'm using now, which again is just 1 Kajura. And you can get 2 of these every reset. These are probably the best bags for winter camo if you are just going to be lying in the snow. There's another alternative as well over on Peacekeeper, which is this guy, which is a 3V Gear Paratus 3-day Operator's Tactical Bag, Foliage Grey, which looks quite nice as well. It's not too bad in the snow either, but this one is just really big. So I would be slightly cautious about lying down with this thing on because your PMC is going to be under it somehow, and then this is going to stick up immensely, and you're going to be seen relatively easily. Now, all that being said, we've gone to a lot of effort of trying to figure out lots of different combinations of bags and armors and rigs and things that are going to make us look whiter, but in the grand scheme of things in Tarkov, we're kind of like in Jurassic Park, where movement is what gets you spotted. It's really only useful if you are sat very, very still and you've got somewhere very good to go where there's not too many sight lines in which this camo is actually going to work. Because the rest of the time, as soon as you're moving about, you're going to be spotted by enemy players pretty easily. And this is even more so in the snow. Because our PMCs are darker usually on a very, very white background, the contrast is extremely high and it is much easier to notice players just in terms of the color difference between our PMCs and the background. That's also then combined with the fact that the foliage is much thinner too, so you can see through most bushes and most trees as well. So even if you are in the distance through a forest, sometimes your movement can be spotted just moving past because you can see the silhouette or the outline of your character going behind the trees, which wouldn't have been possible before on maps like Woods or Shoreline, for example. This has a few different ramifications. It means that firstly, bush camping is a lot harder than it used to be. So if you don't really like bush camping, you like stomping around the map, shooting at people, then this is definitely the time for you to play. And I really enjoy the winter environment myself, actually. You get shot at much less often from just random spots that you can't see outside. But the other part of it is that because you're going to be able to see people further away, you probably actually should bring a slightly longer range gun. This winter mode means that you're probably going to be engaging people from further than you normally would. And so scopes and LPVOs are a little bit more useful than red dots and holographics. Those of you who watch my stream will know that I'm definitely one for running around woods using a holo because people just aren't really expecting it, and you surprise people all the time on woods because there's so much dense foliage. It's very difficult to actually see people at long ranges unless you're picking particular spots. But in the winter update, this is not really as true because you can see people from so much further away, despite whether there's trees there or not. So I would certainly bear that in mind while you're making your loadouts for the winter Tarkov. I really do think the snowy environment is one of the best times to play EFT. It's really one of my favorites, and I hope that some of these tips will help you enjoy it as well. So as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons, and as always, have fun in your raids.